We are live, ladies and gentlemen, on In My Own Words, the podcast, Touchdown Alabama Magazine. Stephen M. Smith back from the break, and I know I mentioned we would get into some things on the best odds of making the college football playoff, also odds for the Heisman Trophy as far as the folks in Las Vegas are concerned, and we're going to get into that. But for right now, we continue a topic this offseason of bringing on distinguished guests, former players, guys that know about the Alabama football program and other programs around the Southeastern Conference. I've had some fun with the segment my own self. We got a chance to speak with my man Desmond Willis. We had a chance to have Gary Enos on, also Rudy Griffin. But now we bring on a personal friend of mine covering the Arkansas Razorbacks for On the Hill Sports Talk Radio, Patt Jenkins out of Fayetteville, Arkansas. Pat, my man, how you feeling?
Good. It's a great 4th of July. And happy 4th to you, Stephen. I hope everything's going good. I'm trying to find a barbecue I can go to. I put in several calls to some of my friends, but, nobody's checked back in with me. But outside of that, it's been a very blessed day, nice, cool weather. And as you know, Stephen, SEC football, it just means more, and it's just around the corner.
My man, I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm going to put in an order for you some barbecue. I'm going to have the hood. I'm going to have the block send you up some fresh barbecue to Fayetteville. How'd that sound?
All right, that sounds good. I'm definitely going to eat it. There's nothing like good barbecue on the 4th of July, fireworks. There's just something special about it. And you always know, like I said, when 4th of July hits, SEC football is right around the corner, which I know it makes a lot of fans, not only here in Fayetteville, but in the entire SEC area, really, really excited.
Always like to give a special shout out to the brave men and women that continue to fight for our country as it is Independence Day, 4th of July. But folks, we are live right now with Patt Jenkins of On the Hill Sports Talk Radio with Patt Jenkins out of Fayetteville, Arkansas, covering the Hogs. Join us live here on the show. And Pat, first and foremost to you, you look at a guy like Chad Morris. There is a new sheriff in town at Arkansas. Razorback fans thought with Brett Bielema a lot of change would come on the scene, especially after what he did for Wisconsin from 2006 to 2012, taking over a team from Barry Alvarez and helping that group reach a number of Big Ten title games, reach the Rose Bowl a couple of times. He had that sense of physicality and toughness, and he tried to bring it down, or Arkansas fans thought he would bring it down to the SEC and know the meaning of, along with having that toughness to get more transcendent players, more big names, but just did not happen for the Hogs. Brett Bielema out now. You bring in a guy in Chad Morris from the Texas area, Southern Methodist University, What has the energy been like on your end and from the end of the Razorback fan base when you talk about Chad Morris in and looking to change the culture that is Razorback football?
The word that I think when I search and I try to think about it is fit. Chad Morris seems to really endear himself to the Razorback fan base. Former players are coming back. I've been at a couple of spring practices this past spring with Chad in his first spring ball here, and you saw a lot of players like the Anthony Hicks, guys that are coming back that have been on SEC championship teams and really laid a lot of the foundation for what Razorback football is really all about. And when you see that, you know that there's something special going on. And then when you look at the kids in which the energy that practice seems to run, there seems to be a lot more bounce. Kids that, are hungry to really change the culture and the legacy here since they've been here. We all know, Stephen, there's been a lot of SEC wins here since 2012, I believe maybe 13. So in that period, and the kids are just at a point where they're tired of, being that team that people talk about, being a losing program. I've told people in and about town, Stephen, this change over to Chad Morris has a lot of feel back in '98 when Houston Nutt came in, and he was coming off of Danny Ford in that 4-7 season. We all know how that season went. There was a lot of experience, the C.J. McLeans, the Kenoy Kennedys, those guys, Jeremy Flowers, Jakulas, Clint Sterners, those guys were hungry for a winner. And we know in '98 they came very, very close to winning that national championship. Had not been through the turnover, and I'm not saying that to say that that's going to be what happens this year, but just the energy. There's a lot of experience on defense. Sosa Games going into his junior year. You've got Santos Ramirez, and I think a real big thing, Ryan Pulley's going to come back at that cornerback spot. And they got a real big boost when Kevin Richardson was granted a 6th year at the University of Arkansas. You have the addition, Stephen, of Chief, John Chavis, one of the best defensive coordinators, I believe, in all of the SEC. He's coached defense for over 30-some-odd years, been the defensive coordinator. With the aggressiveness that which they're going to play both on the offensive side and defensive side, that's really invigorated these guys. And I think you'll start, the fan base, and I think people around the country will just start to see a more hungry, more urgent football team. And I think that's going to really, pay dividends as the season and years go on forward for Chad Morris.
Folks, we are live on the line right now with my man Patt Jenkins of On the Hill Sports Talk Radio with Patt Jenkins out of Fayetteville, Arkansas, on In My Own Words. And Pat, the biggest thing for Arkansas is going to be offense. Chad Morris, an offensive-minded guy. During his time at Clemson, I believe he molded a young quarterback by the name of Tosh Boyd to be a big-time star. And when you look at Arkansas, they've had some strong quarterback play in the past, whether it was Matt Jones, guys like Ryan Mallett, players like Tyler Wilson. You had the brothers, Brandon and Austin Allen, that had quite a bit of success. But now it seems like it's Cole Kelly time. But from talking to you off the air, Arkansas is bringing in some young guns, some young bloods that in the years to come, we could be looking at a quarterback situation, a quarterback race in Hawk Country. Just speak to what is Chad Morris trying to infuse offensively? Because nowadays, with the influx of new minds, new offensive coordinators, new schemes, more dual threat quarterbacks, guys that can beat you in a variety of ways, the SEC has become a conference where you better have a quarterback that can do both things well. I mean, you look at Jarrett Stidham, he can run the ball a little bit and can throw. Jake Fromm, big-time thrower of the football at Georgia, can also run a little bit if need be. You come to Alabama, the same thing with Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa. Can throw the football, but also have the wheels to escape the pocket in case pressure comes in. You look at Mississippi State, they have it with Nick Fitzgerald at quarterback. So just speak to what is going to be the biggest thing for Chad Morris offensively when you talk quarterback and making the Hogs explosive on that position group.
I think you'll see Cole Kelly in the beginning, but, Ty Story really had a good spring. But the young man I think people are really going to have to look out for is a true freshman out of Greenwood, Arkansas, Connor Nolan. He's a two-sport athlete, won both a high school football state championship and a baseball state championship there at Greenwood, Arkansas. Another young man who a lot of us may know is John Stephen Jones. And if you know that Jones name, it's the grandson of Jerry Jones himself, the owner of the Cowboys. This guy's a two-time 5A state championship quarterback. I think what you're going to see, like you mentioned the Tosh Boyds and the Deshaun Watson. You can go back to the Tulsa days, Chad, back in 2010 where you had KJ Keeney. And you look at the SEC, Stephen, we all know defenses are getting bigger, faster, stronger, a lot of multiple schemes where they're blitzing from all different areas. And you have to have that mobile quarterback in the SEC. I was thinking back, I talked to a friend of mine a couple of days ago. It wasn't too long that we used to see Nick Saban and the Brett Bielema's and you talk about so many quarterbacks that were more pro style, but then he gets a Jalen Hurts, he gets a Tua Tagovailoa, and things start to change. I feel like you have to be mobile in today's age to have a real successful offense. And I'll also go back, if we played back in the day that wing T offense, well, what you're going to see is more of a wing T in Arkansas under Chad Morris, but it's going to be run at 120% octane. You go back and watch how the transformation from Clemson under Dabo and then 2011 Chad comes in, and the offense just completely changes. I know a lot of people may not know, but SMU last year, I believe, was the number 8 offense in all of college football. And people may say SMU. Well, if you can do it at SMU, just imagine the athletes that he's going to have. And I've always told people, Stephen, I believe here at Arkansas for several years, they've had the kids to run the Chad Moore scheme, that spread offense, that tunnel screen, the downfield pressure, taking those shots, more so than they did, running the power game like they did with Brett Bielema in Wisconsin and Big Ten. So, and I think that really invigorates the kids. They've also got another young man that's, going to be a freshman next year. He just committed to him, KJ Jefferson, who's the #1 quarterback out of the Mississippi area. He's going to come in, and he's going to remind a lot of people here at Arkansas and throughout the SEC of a real young, still raw version of Deshaun Watson, very mobile. And I think that's what you're going to see more and more with Chad Moore's quarterbacks here at the University of Arkansas going forward.
As we look at the defense here, Pat, you bring up John Chavis. And Chief, for what his pedigree was at Tennessee and LSU, very physical, very aggressive defensive coordinator. Love to call blitzes, love to use combo coverages, love to attack off the edge. When you faced Chief, he took a lot out of you physically, but he took a lot out of you mentally and emotionally. If you don't believe me, you go ask A.J. McCarron, former Alabama quarterback, during the 2012 Alabama-LSU game at Tiger Stadium, the one in which the Crimson Tide were able to win on a screen pass from McCarron to T.J. Yeldon. After that game, McCarron was seen on the sideline in tears because of how physical LSU was, how much that game takes out of you emotionally and mentally. John Chavis goes to Texas A&M. The Aggies believed that he would bring that same type of ability to that program in College Station. Unfortunately, did not happen. Now, it probably may not have been the best fit. Who knows? But now he goes to Arkansas. Now he goes to a program where, Brett Bielema has already kind of instilled that physicality there coming from Arkansas. In your mind, Pat, do we see the return of old Chief to where he brings back that physicality, he brings back that toughness, both mentally and emotionally to this team? Do you feel like Texas A&M was not the fit and Arkansas is the fit? Speak on Chief for a moment.
I think, and I've talked about it and thought about it, Stephen. I think John Chavis got really a bad rap at Texas A&M when you're playing the type of offense that Kevin Sumlin was playing, and you had younger quarterbacks that weren't able to establish, extensive drives. I tell people it doesn't matter what type of defense you run or what type of defense coordinator. There's not a defense that can continue to go in 3 and outs and play over half of the football game. There's going to be some fatigue set in. As we evidenced with Arkansas's inept offense last year, no matter what type of talent they had, those kids were going to get tired. But, knowing Chief and seeing the scheme as I've seen it, in spring ball, these kids are really excited. I love that, the day he was hired here, his press conference was, for every problem they give us offensively, we're going to give them a defensive problem. And being in Jerry's world, having firsthand knowledge and sight of what John Chavis' defense can all the havoc that they can, present, it's not too far removed. 2 years ago, I think John had the #1 draft pick in Myles Garrett. He runs a very exciting defense, a 4-3 scheme that kids love to blitz. And that's what kids want to do. Kids want to come out of 4-3 schemes like they do in high school and constantly pressure the quarterback. It's fun when you're able to blitz and you don't know where it's going to come from, the safety to the defensive end, maybe the free safety, outside linebacker. That excites kids. And I think with Arkansas, in talking to the kids over the last several years, a lot of these young men were wanting to play that style of defense. They're finally getting the opportunity. I think you're going to see an even tremendous improvement in Nick Saban's Sosa game. He's 286, but he's not that heavy-set guy that we have seen in the previous 2 years playing defensive tackle. I think you're going to see a great year out of Santos Ramirez, a fifth-year senior, Kevin Richardson, a young man that it was granted a 6th year, and also one of the better corners, unfortunately, went down in game 1 in Ryan Pooley. Cameron Curl's a true freshman last year that's going to be a sophomore, moved back to safety. And, let's not forget Scooter Harris, Dijon Harris, and Drake Greenlaw, two of the top tacklers in the SEC at linebacker. So there's going to be a lot of season with an extra kick and excitement because as all of them, they respect Chief. They love playing his style of defense. And, when Chief came in, it was just a new energy that I'm starting to see. So I expect this to be a fit for Chief. I think Chief feels like he has something to prove, having the season that he had. We all know here at Arkansas, especially, the types of defenses that he put out against Arkansas at Texas A&M, at LSU, and even going back to '98, when he was a coordinator at Tennessee. Chief understands winning defense in the SEC, and I think the kids believe in him. And when you have guys like Ron Cooper, who he's very familiar with, Steve Caldwell, those guys have had coaching experience, and you have the experience of defensive line coach John Scott. He's very familiar with the defense, and Mark Smith is a young man that came over with Chad Morris that just seems to, pump a lot of energy into this kid. I think that's really what it boils down to is the energy and anticipation and urgency that this defensive staff, particularly the Chief, has instilled. And I'm really looking for Arkansas to be one of the better defenses. Will they be the top defense? Probably not. But I think they're going to be vastly improved from the numbers that were put up against them last year.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are on the line with my man, the man behind On the Hill Sports Talk Radio with Patt Jenkins out of Fayetteville, Arkansas. The man, Patt Jenkins, joining me live on In My Own Words. Pat, flipping this back over to offense. We touched on quarterbacks, but we all know Arkansas is going to pound the rock. Razorbacks are going to pound the rock. They're going to get the ball to a number of different receivers and tight ends. In years past, in the ground game, you had guys like Alex Collins, Jonathan Williams. Unfortunately, the injury to Raleigh Williams III, which had him retire early from the game of football. You got Devwah Whaley returning also at the receiver positions. You guys have had players like Drew Morgan, Cody Hollister, Keon Hatcher at tight end, the great Hunter Henry and Jeremy Sprinkle. But when you look at this year's Arkansas team, who have you seen that has taken a leadership role at running back, at wide receiver, at tight end? Who are the guys that, when we watch the Hogs on Saturday, who are the guys that we should be going, oh my goodness, who are the big-time players, Pat?
I think you're going to see Devwah Whaley, former Under Armour All-American out of Beaumont, Texas, going into his junior year. I think Devwah, number 21, is going to take a big leadership role. I've seen that. Malik Williams is a red-shirt young man out of the Florida area that set out last year. Also, too, Chase Hayes, the young man out of the Germantown, Tennessee area. Father played at Tennessee Aaron, has a burst that, you just love to have, and unfortunately got hurt, was not able to finish out the year. You see a big-time jump at that running back spot. Kareem Boyd is another young man that started his career at Texas A&M, moved on to Independence, now has reemerged at Arkansas. He should be a young man coming in. You know how they do in the junior college area. They always come with a little extra chip on their shoulder. You only have 2 years. There's a little urgency. At the tight end spot, I look for Cheyenne O'Grady, Jeremy Patton, to have really, really big years. The only time I really felt good about the tight end spot was the TCU game. Going back to last year, those two started off the first quarter like they were going to have a tremendous game. Unfortunately, the touches really kind of waned, but these are guys that's really seasoned. If you look at a Chad Morris offense, go back to, like I said, Tulsa, Clemson, and SMU. The tight end is a very, very important spot. I say it's the second most important spot on a Chad Morris offense outside of the quarterback. And they seem to really, really be excited. Wide receiver, I think Jared Cornelius is going to have a big year, unfortunately, due to injuries. He was not able to reach his full potential. He had a lot of expectations coming into his senior year last year, was able to get that redshirt year. I think Jonathan Nance is going to be a young man that's going to continue the season that he had. Jordan Jones is a true freshman that I look for big things out of. And another young man that people are going to start to hear about is Tyson Morris, a young man transferred in from SEMO, southeastern Missouri, set out last year, but has had a really good spring, really good camp. Also, too, you want to look at Coylin Jackson. He's going to be a guy, but one that I really think is going to stand out is true freshman Mike Woods. This guy came in behind Chad, was recruited by Chad Morris and staff while at SMU, followed Chad to Fayetteville, and last but not least, a guy that has tremendous potential. and it's just been eager and oozing to come out, I think, with Michael Petway. Michael Petway, I think, is set up to have a tremendous junior year. And just the offensive line. You know, we talk about offensive line. Yogi Froholt looks tremendous physically. I think Brian Wallace is set to have a great fifth-year senior year. You know, this was a guy that chose Arkansas, came down to Arkansas in Alabama for this young man, U.S. Army All-American. So, you know, I think there's going to be just a lot of energy. And Arkansas, I know, will be a very aggressive offense as well as defense. And that's just something I think that's really excited those kids, excited the entire campus and the fan base. It goes without saying how excited, and just the expectations that they're, you know, wanting to get back to the Petrino offense when it was up tempo. Because I'm wanting to believe, Stephen, Arkansas, to be successful offensively in the SEC, they've always had to be that run-pass offense. They have to be balanced until Chad can continue to recruit those big wide receivers, 6'4" to 6'3", those speedy, you know, scat backs that can run your jet sweeps, catch your tunnel screens. But all that's coming. But this year, he has, I think the key he has, he's going to have about 20 or so seniors, a big junior class with a lot of experience in the SEC, and they're really excited about that.
On the line right now with Patt Jenkins from On the Hill Sports Talk Radio with Patt Jenkins out of Fayetteville, Arkansas. Pat, what is the expectation for this year's Arkansas team? I mean, when you look at Texas A&M with Jimbo Fisher coming over from Florida State, I got a chance to talk with Mark Passwaters, who covers the Aggies for Rivals.com, and the expectation the Aggies have year one is be competitive. They know by year two, especially year three, with the money being thrown in that program, that by year three, A&M will be a program that will not just challenge Alabama, but could possibly be in the driver's seat for a Southeastern Conference title opportunity, maybe even a shot at the college football playoff. When I look at you and when I look at Arkansas, Pat, what is the genuine expectation from fans year one with Chad Morris?
I think shoot for 7 wins. I think with the schedule being as it is, you don't have to play Florida, you don't play the Georgias, you don't have South Carolina. Your 2 Eastern Conference cross games are, I believe, Vanderbilt and Missouri. And now Missouri is going to be at Missouri, but Arkansas, after they, leave Jerry's world, playing the Auburn title, playing A&M, Arkansas doesn't leave the state for about 6 weeks. I think with the experience, this is something that Chad and that program, that football team, they desperately need to gain confidence. But, I think more realistic fans are thinking 6 wins, get the bowl win, maybe 7. I think that's going to be a realistic expectation. I'm not going to sit here and say, they're going to win the national. It's going to be like 98. No, I don't think that, because you have to be lucky sometimes rather than good. This team just wants to build. If Chad Morris can get to 7 wins, I will have to consider this a very, very successful year and beyond, because Chad's really got strong ties in the state of Texas. He's going to start to get some of the better players in that state. I truly believe. But this year, Stephen, I think 6, 7 wins. If he gets 8 wins, Chad Morris should be up for Coach of the Year. But right now, if you had to ask me, I'd say 7 would be, the ceiling. And fans in the state of Arkansas would really be excited about that.
7 wins, the number being said here by our own Patt Jenkins on what would measure the success for Chad Morris in year one with the Arkansas Razorbacks. Pat, this has kind of been a very weird conversation throughout the offseason, but when you look at recruiting, there's been a lot of coaches that have used that negative recruiting tactic when it comes to Alabama and Nick Saban, in terms of Nick Saban, 66 years old. He turned 67 October of this year, he turned 67. But somehow, some way, Alabama continues to be that team under Nick Saban that gets the big-time athletes, the big-time recruits. Now, 2018, it finished 6th in recruiting. This class right here, 2019, already the #1 class in the country far and away. Nick Saban bringing in a lot of young minds to the staff that know social media, that know how to reach these guys and speak the language of the 16, 17, 18-year-old individual. Hearing this from you, Pat, just coming from your mind, what do you think, or in your mind, how has Nick Saban been able to constantly relate to the youth of this generation despite getting older?
I think it boils down to a winning culture. When you have a winning culture and kids see that growing up, we all know you start to, when you get to be about 5th or 6th grade, you start looking at, picking your favorite teams. And here over the last 10 years, what's been the benchmark team of all of college football? Nick Saban. You've seen how Nick was able to have success at LSU. He moves on to Alabama, a storied program. Like I said, when you build a sense of a winning culture, and it's continuous. It's almost like if Nick Saban and Alabama don't start off year 1 and 2, you're looking for every magazine and you're calling a lot of publications saying, I think there's been a misprint. The guy does it the correct way. I had the privilege of going in and hearing a little bit of Nick Saban's press conference. Had some footage on it, and he just understands how to relate to kids, and he understands the development. I think that's the one thing that sets Nick apart in the SEC is not only do they get those 4 and 5 stars, those kids that are top 5 at all positions, but they're able to develop. And that just, you have to be a coach to develop talent. Doesn't necessarily mean just because you have it, it's always going to, come to fruition. But he's able to get the maximum potential out of these kids. They love playing for him. And there's not a class, I believe, Stephen, that wants to be that class that's not in the playoffs, that's not winning SEC titles. And until, a lot of people catch him, I don't see Nick Saban slowing down at all. Doesn't matter the age. Last time I checked, Calipari, a guy named Krzyzewski, those guys are all in their 60s and continue to win at a high rate. So age has never really mattered to me. It's the culture that I continue to see at Alabama. That's what makes Nick Saban who Nick Saban is.
When you look at Pat, Arkansas, as we get ready to sign off here, for the Razorbacks, there have been moments where Arkansas has played Alabama tough. I go back to 2014 where final score was 14-13 in soggy, wet, horribly conditioned field at DWR Razorback Stadium. I remember Alabama squeaking out a 14-13 win. Then I remember the following year, 2015, the Hogs had a 7-3 lead on Alabama until late third quarter. You had Jacob Coker hook up with Calvin Ridley for an 81-yard touchdown. Alabama went on to win that one 27-14. I can even remember back in 2010 when you guys had Ryan Mallett at quarterback. Alabama barely won that one 24-20. So there have been some close runs between Alabama and Arkansas. Arkansas has been right there at times of potentially getting an upset over Alabama. What's the mindset, this year when you take on the Crimson Tide, Alabama traveling to Fayetteville this upcoming year? I will be making that journey myself. What will be the mindset for Chad Morris when you talk about you're facing Nick Saban? How can we be competitive? How can we win this game? What does Arkansas need to do when that matchup comes up?
I think a lot of it's going to be determined on how the season has gone leading up. If they still have the fan base involved. Donald W. Reynolds Razorback Stadium, I think, is one of the more electric environments when Arkansas is a successful program. And I think it's going to be based on just the confidence that they have. What will their record be? How will they be health-wise? Because you have to be having a lot of confidence, and you have to be healthy when you go up against Alabama. A lot of those guys that are seniors and juniors like McTelvin Game and Jared Cornelius, Yelta Froholt, those guys remember 2 years ago the embarrassment that took place, and they're not wanting to relive that, but you have to be healthy, and you have to get turnovers to beat the University of Alabama and Nick Saban. I think John Chavis has proven that he can compete. I think having John Chavis being the defense coordinator and having a guy that's beaten and played against Alabama on multiple occasions, both home and away, that's going to be a big plus. And it's just continuing to build that confidence. If this team can start off good and catch a break here or there, most importantly, stay healthy. I think this game here in Fayetteville this year, October 6th, is going to be a little bit closer. Right now, I have to give the edge because Alabama they just reload. They never rebuild. Arkansas is just going to have to change the culture and get wins. And maybe, they may not beat them this year, and Chad's going to have to continue to recruit. I think what things that also gives Alabama problems is that over the years is mobile quarterbacks. So, eventually Arkansas is going to have to get that mobile quarterback, and I think that's going to give them its best chance to win. But just stay healthy. Don't turn the ball over. We always know in the last couple of years it's always come down to a turnover or two that changes the momentum in those games. They're going to have to be real, take care of the ball. But I think it's going to be I think it's going to be a better game than it has been here the previous 2 years.
We're on the phone line right now. Patt Jenkins with On the Hill Sports Talk Radio with Patt Jenkins out of Fayetteville, Arkansas. So happy to have my man join us live on In My Own Words, talking some Arkansas Razorback football. Ladies and gentlemen, Touchdown Alabama Magazine YouTube channel, the spot you need to go to for the smart Alabama football fan, the one that craves the content. You want to know the best up-to-date analysis, commentary, talking points about your team, Crimson Tide under Nick Saban. Check out Touchdown Alabama Magazine YouTube. Subscribe, like the podcast, leave comments, thoughts, concerns. If you can't catch the podcast on YouTube, SoundCloud, your way to go. For all the audio listeners out there, trying to get this pumped out 3 days a week. The goal would be Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, but definitely getting you this information 3 days a week in terms of the Crimson Tide. Pat, my man, as you're getting ready to finish enjoying your Independence Day, any final thoughts on your end?
No, I'm looking forward to doing more podcasts with you, having you also on my show, On the Hill with Patt Jenkins. You can catch our show, like Steven said, on YouTube. We're also on iHeartRadio. You can catch our show. We Facebook stream live as well. Just any comments, also a webpage, On the Hill Sports Talk. I just love doing it, love working with you, and looking forward to, another year of good SEC football. And we didn't get a chance even last year to have our dinner at SEC Media Day, but I promise you we're definitely going to have a meal, sit down, maybe have a cocktail, and just talk more SEC football as we always do, because as you said, slogan, it just means more.
SEC Media Days right around the corner, ladies and gentlemen. Should be a great one for all of us here at Touchdown Alabama Magazine. I'm yours truly, Stephen M. Smith. When we get back, we will discuss more of the conversation on best odds of winning the college football playoff and the player that has the best odds, the quarterback right now, that has the best odds of winning the Heisman Trophy for next season. Don't touch that dial, folks. It's In My Own Words. We'll be right back. It's your boy, Stephen M. Smith, host of In My Own Words, the podcast. If you are a fan of this show, then I encourage you to subscribe to the Touchdown Alabama Magazine YouTube channel. Also follow the brand on Facebook, Twitter, and other forms of social media as we continue to bring you the best in Alabama football and Crimson Tide athletics.